Friends, you may be seated. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. Also, thank you to those who are joining us on the live stream. In just a few moments, we will begin the service for Charles L Sonneborn III. Just a gentle reminder, if anybody has a phone, please take a moment to turn it on silent. Officiating our service today is Rabbi Evan Moffick and Cantor J. O'Brien.
Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat, to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, death a destination, and life is a journey, sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. These words, which were penned by Rabbi Alvin Fine, really express the Jewish philosophy of life and of death. They tell us that we come here in grief, but we also come here as much as we can, the measure of gratefulness. Grateful that God blessed the world with the life of Chuck Sonneborn. Our Jewish funeral service is fairly simple, consists of some readings, some psalms, some reflections, and concludes with the Kaddish prayer. We'll continue now with the words of the 23rd Psalm. We'll read them together in Hebrew, or in English, and Cantor O'Brien will chant them for us in Hebrew. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Adonai roi lo echsar minodei sheyarbitzeni alemei menuchot Yanaleini Nafshi Yeshovev Yancheni b'magel tzedek Yancheni b'magel tzedek Leman shemo ki enlech meget al maved lo ira ki atahimadi shivtecho umishantecha hey moyen nochamuni Daroch lefanai shulchan neged zorerai nishanta Hashem en roshi kosi revayai Ach tov v'chesed yirifuni Kol yemei chayai Kol yemei chayai Mishavti meveit Adonai leorech yami Adonai roi lo echsar Adonai roi lo echsar.
At the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. The rustling of the leaves, in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. The opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. Beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember Chuck Sonneborn, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. As long as we live, Chuck too shall live. He is now a part of us as we remember him. Now I'd like to invite up a couple of family members who will share their memories.
During a recent visit, one of my dad's longtime friends came out of his bedroom and asked, "Do you want to know what I said to him?" I said, "Of course I do." She said, "I told him he was the greatest lover." At first I was taken aback. I thought, why is she telling me this? Thankfully, she went on to clarify. She said, "Your dad loved with greatness, and he was greatly loved." And she was right. In 1955, just after graduation, my dad married the love of his life. And in 1956, they started their family with Roger. By 1968, the house was filled with 5 kids. As a little kid, I will remember the way my father would greet my mother when he got home from work. There was love and affection, sometimes too much for my young eyes. Their affection for one another never faded, even up until my dad's final days. At age 28, my dad found a new appreciation for me because that's when I married Julie and made her part of our family. He never could understand how I got so lucky, But then again, he knew he had the same such luck when he married my mom. My dad was a loving grandfather. Oftentimes, when Pop and Beamy took care of the girls, they would go on excursions to the city, the theater, architectural tours, and to the city apartment. The city apartment was special in part because of my dad's unique taste for art. After one Saturday afternoon visit to the city, the girls came home and nonchalantly mentioned that they had counted over 20 nude paintings, sculptures, and photographs in the apartment. Honestly, I think they missed a few, and I would argue in my dad's defense, he simply appreciated beauty in the female form, and he appreciated art. He really did love his grandchildren. He repeatedly told me the best part of having kids was the grandkids, and the best part of having me was, of course, Julie. Julie and I marveled at my parents' social life. They were busier than we were, all the way up until the recent months. They built and maintained tremendous friendships, loyal and committed. It has been inspiring. Some of their closest friends date back over 50 years. But Mom and Dad never stopped making new friends. If asked, they would say that their friends greatly enriched their lives, and it was they who loved greatly. And I would agree. A couple of days ago, my mom said, "Peter, you can speak at Dad's celebration of life, but please, not too much crying." She said, "Nobody can understand you between tears, so I'll do my best, Mom." I am really proud of who my father was. He was an amazing role model. This is some of what I observed of life as lived by Chuck Sonneborn. He loved fully. He consistently treated others well. He put others at ease. He made others feel accepted and respected. He genuinely cared about others and demonstrated it through his actions. He spoke with sincerity, or he said nothing at all. He had a kind spirit, he had a generous spirit, and he was full of gratitude. He was the greatest lover.
We're going to read a few words written by our dad. Words from my father. In my father's later years, he would often remark at how lucky he was. I knew he was talking about our family and health and the loving relationships he had with all of us. I too feel lucky to have those same reasons, but also to have had him as a father, role model, an example of how to live life to the fullest. He had many strengths. He had an unflappable moral compass. He was the ultimate family man and good businessman. He had many friends, as you can see here today, and he had multiple hobbies and interests. He truly had some special gifts. Some I have, others I wish I had. He was a wonderful listener. He thought before he spoke, connected with people easily. He was engaging and did it all with grace while looking good with his quick smile and blue eyes.
Yes, he was an impressive guy. He played tennis until he was 85 and decided to stop playing only when he no longer felt comfortable running backwards. He enjoyed playing bridge, duplicate bridge, until just a couple of months ago. Thank you, Dad, for all those great memories. Fried bologna sandwiches, taking Sally and I sailing at the Skokie Lagoon when we were tiny kids, the many family vacations, including the Winnebago trip along the California coast on Highway 1 with all the mishaps and nights spent at the Piggly Wiggly parking lots. The road trip we took to Montana, Yvette, Dustin, and Lucas, the many Bears games, the tailgating that went along with it, the fishing trips, and the wonderful times together. Dad, if you can hear me, I love you, and thanks again. May you rest in peace.
These are words from me now. My brother and I always called him Grandpa, and I'm pretty sure everybody else in here had a different name for him. But I know everyone viewed him the same way. He had a smile that could light up the room. He knew what to say and when to say it. He never missed anything and was always one of the first to celebrate his family, from graduations to birthdays to sporting events growing up, you name it. He showed up, camera in hand. I even remember him and Grandma sitting through a WNBA game just to see me at work. Just so you know, by the time they were there, my job was done. I sold tickets. But whatever he could do to show his support, he would, and he wanted you to feel it and also document it. He taught me a lot. As a kid, my brother and I would have sleepovers at their house in Highland Park. They would always make apple pie, and Grandpa always had the job of peeling all the apples. I remember we would spend a lot of time at the workbench in the basement or shooting the BB gun at cans out back, but he also taught me a lot with his actions. He made such an effort to become friends with all of the in-laws' families, and he had a great relationship with all of them. He showed us how important family was to him. The common theme of my grandpa is all about family, but I can't leave out all of his friends too. I really don't think there was anything more important to him than his family and friends. He loved watching us grow as individuals and loved watching our family get bigger over the years. One thing about his friends, which didn't hit me until I got older, but it's rare to know all of your grandparents' close friends your whole life. I was able to see firsthand how all of his friends felt about him and admired him, and I feel lucky to have had that same man as my grandpa. You had an untouchable sense of style, a true Midwestern cowboy, so much love, passion, and generosity in your heart. Grandpa, I'm really going to miss all the phone conversations we have, especially after all the Bears games. But I will cherish the memories from tailgating to family reunions in Wheeling or Circlesy. Love you, Grandpa. Bear down.
Oh, gosh, where to start? I'll start with the easiest. Grandpa Chuck, Papa Chuck, Chuck the Friend, and Sonny, as he was known in Appalachia, and most recently, Papa Truck to Baby Moses, was a great man with enough dimensions and qualities to make 100 other great men and probably have some to spare. He had the humble contentedness of a man who had a lot but didn't find himself undeserving. He held on to the things dear to him, married for almost 68 years to the love of his life, Sandra, Grandma Sandy. Kept in great touch with his 5 children and each of his 9 grandchildren, and had a large and incredibly tight circle of friends. He somehow brought all those things together. I don't know how common it is to know a dozen of your grandparents' friends, but between bridge, tennis, the birthday club, and New Year's Eve, I'm actually thankful there weren't more names to memorize and thank you notes to write when the big events came up for his kids and grandkids. But that's who he was. They traveled. He soaked in culture and traveled the world in his cowboy hat, bringing home a piece of everywhere they went. And they explored at home, too. He soaked up Grandma's information and became almost a docent by proxy downtown. He and I got into photography around the same time, him as an overactive retiree and myself as a high schooler looking for an easy A. Though I don't think I ever got higher than a B-. We explored the galleries of River North and the museums downtown together. I think one of the most special things about him was how knowable he felt. He wasn't the mysterious Oz behind the curtain. He was truly himself, and the same in all his multitudes. I know him as my grandfather, but I also knew he was and got to see him in all his elements, as a businessman, friend, a husband, a father, a grandfather, not only to myself in the first person, but again down the road in the third person, to the other grandkids that came behind Lucas and I. A great-grandfather now, and crucially, we knew him as a son. They say you can learn a lot about a man by how he treats his mother. Imagine what you could learn from your grandfather on a long road trip back to West Virginia to see his mother. There's so much more to say. A metaphor about being a national champion marksman and his steady but powerful presence. Additional mentions of the fishing trips to Lake Geneva and Foley Pond. Bears games and his famous hot chocolate. The time he orchestrated a date for Lucas just by returning a pair of pants. And a funny story about popping into a restaurant we probably shouldn't have been in together. The way he said, "You're incredible," in a way that was bitingly sarcastic and yet still felt like a compliment. But I don't want to overdo it. I just want to conclude by saying he was a great man and happy with his great life. And I think he would have been happy in any time, in any place. But he deserved the good fortune he got to live a long and rich life with the loves of his life, surrounded by a large family and countless friends.
Now we'll offer some words from Psalm 121 in Chuck's memory. Esoenai el harim me'ain yavo ezri Esoenai el harim me'ain yavo ezri Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim v'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim v'aretz. I lift up my eyes up to the mountains. From where will my help arrive? I lift up my eyes up to the mountain. From where will my help arrive? My help, it comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and maker of earth. My help, it comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and maker of earth. Esoenai el harim me'ain yavo ezri.
Adonai, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, those who do justly, those who speak truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless but honor those who revere God, who give their word and come what may, do not retract, who do not exploit others, do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. These are words from Psalm 15 that are about what makes an ethical, rooted, wonderful human being. And Chuck Sonneborn embodied all of those qualities. As we just heard so eloquently, He was an extraordinarily kind and loving husband, father, grandfather, and recently a great-grandfather. He was also a friend to so many. Many come from this synagogue, some of his closest lifelong friends. And funny enough, Chuck didn't grow up with very much Judaism. Much more of a classical reform. Even that might be a stretch of a background. His father talked to him about Judaism when he was going to college as a preparation against potential anti-Semitism. But after he married Sandra and moved out here to the North Shore, they weren't going to join Bethel, where Sandra's parents were. And there was this new synagogue that had just formed, and he called the rabbi, Arnold Wolf, and said, I'd like to buy some tickets for the High Holy Days. And Arnold Wolf said, sorry, you can't buy any tickets for the High Holy Days, but I can send you some at no cost. And ultimately, that began a relationship and commitment to this community, to what we stand for. And Arnold Wolf was his Judaism, was his rabbi. And in a few weeks, we're going to be gathering for the Jewish holiday of Passover. If you think about it, Passover, it's about the Jewish story, the Exodus. But it's really about family. It's really about people from different generations coming and sitting around the table and telling the story. It's about family traditions, foods, readings, customs. And family was everything to Chuck. In fact, one family member told me recently that when she was walking over to Mather, and she asked him, what were you thinking about just before I came? And he said, my family. Family was everything. He was married for 67 years, Sandra. And family was not only something that was important, but it was something he lived and did, doing errands with his children, taking care of them, spending time, extraordinary family vacations and times together. In Jewish tradition, we honor a loved one who has recently passed away with the words Zichrona Livracha. May his memory be a blessing. These words convey the purpose of a well-lived life. Those who know you, those who come after you, those who remember you, look to your life as a blessing, a benediction, and an inspiration. Being a blessing means that you have touched the lives of those you knew and that you have helped them to do the same for others. For so many people, Chuck Sonneborn was a blessing. Especially for Sandra and Roger and Yvette, Sally and Mark and Beth, Peter, Julia, and Susie and Tom, Dustin, Merrill, and Lucas, Scott, Nina and Allie and Emily, Charlie, and Caleb and Wiley and Moses. And all of those whose lives he touched, in business, in friendship, in this community, for all those whose lives he touched, who touched his. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of Chuck Sonneborn endure among us as an everlasting blessing. God, you give us loved ones. You make them the strength of our life and the light of our eyes. They depart and leave us bereft on a lonely way, but you are the living fountain from which our healing flows. To you, the stricken look for comfort and the sorrow-laden for consolation. God, we see life as through windows that open on eternity. We see that love endures, and the soul endures, as you, O God, endure forever. We see that the years are more than grass that withers, more than flowers that fade. They weave a timeless pattern in a world that is a dwelling place of your love and your presence. And as one family member mentioned to me, Chuck was a tremendous presence. He was there physically and figuratively. He was a presence in our lives. And so to honor that presence, I invite you now to please rise as we say the El Mole Rachamim prayer.
El mole rachamim, shochein v'meromim. Omitzeim menucha nechona, tachat al kanefei hashechinah. Im kiroshim uteorim kezoar arakia masyerim lenishmot yokirenu shalach leolamo bal rachamim Yostirem beseder kenafav leolamim Vitzror mitzror achayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalatam Vayanuach mishalom amishkavam V'nomar Amen.
Eternal God, full of compassion, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, loved one, friend, Charles Sonneborn III, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings. May his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. For you, the eternal God, are his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
We'll conclude now with the Kaddish prayer, our traditional Jewish prayer of mourning. And the Kaddish honors life. And it reminds us that the way we honor a loved one is by remembering their most wonderful qualities and seeking to integrate them into our own lives. So as is ancient Jewish tradition, we say together, Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Ve'alma, Divra, Kirute, Ve'amlich Malchute, V'chayechon, U'vyomechon, U'vchaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala ubizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevorach leolam ulamei omaya. Yitbarach yishtabach yitpa'ar v'yitmomam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May God, the source of peace, send peace to all of us who mourn, and may the memory of Chuck Sonneborn endure among us as an everlasting blessing, and let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
Friends, this concludes our service in the chapel, the sanctuary, rather. Shiva will begin just outside the sanctuary doors in the hall in the back. Everyone's invited for light refreshments. This afternoon, Shiva will continue at the Mather from 3 to 6. That's 425 Davis Street in Evanston. Memorial contributions in Chuck's memory can be made to the charity of your choice. At this time, I'm going to ask everyone to please rise as we escort the family out first. After the families had a few moments to gather in the hall just outside the sanctuary, everybody else could join them for start of Shiva. Thank you.